The meeting is being live streamed. Got it. Setting up your meeting for YouTube.
I saw that, yep.
And we're on.
Is this me? We're on?
Meeting is being live streamed. Got it. Setting up your meeting for YouTube.
I saw that, yep.
And we're
Is
on.
this me? We're on?
Meeting is being live streamed.
I hear like a recording, guys.
Yes, a little delayed.
I hear like a recording, guys.
Yeah, I see.
Hey.
Go to you. There you go. I'm delayed quite a bit.
Me too.
No, when I see you, Ray, you're fine. Yeah, I see. Go to you. There you go. I'm delayed quite a bit.
Me too. I'm talking about the audio.
No, when I see you, Ray, you're fine. Yeah, I'm delayed quite a bit.
I'm talking about the audio.
When I see you, Ray, you're fine. Mute your audio on YouTube. Okay. Okay. You know how to mute your audio on YouTube? Ray. There we go.
You said, do I know how to do it?
I took care of it.
Oh, okay. All right, so I guess what are we doing? Is James on? Is he coming back? What's the word?
He's supposed to be coming back. He was setting up something at the house there, and he should be coming back.
Okay, so I think you are the only one who has eyes on who's on, Mitch. So if anybody's on or not, we could still go on. We could still start if you want to, because we already have 2 questions.
You do? Okay, I see Tiffany Trill.
Okay, yeah, so people will start trickling on in, and we could still go ahead because we have 2 questions to start off on, one with Miriam and one with Seth.
Okay, bro. Now here's what you got to remember is that
see on my Facebook, they're asking how do we get to the discussion? I'm about to comment now. Just to go to the YouTube. All right, give me a second. Let me do this. Hey, Miriam. So go to our YouTube.
Becky's on.
All right. Hey, guys.
Becky's on. Defiantly Trill is on. Hey, guys. Can you hear us? If you can hear us, guys, give us a thumbs up. Becky. Hey, Julie. If you can hear us, give us a thumbs up, please. Hey, everyone. There's James. James, can you? Well.
I'm on.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if everyone knows this, but we just figured out how to do this in the waning seconds of 7 o'clock. So we're overcoming the technical stuff. We're learning on the fly. So thank you for your patience.
Yeah. So
Also,
James, what I was telling Mitch, as people start trickling in here, I don't know how we want to do the questions, but we have 2 questions that people actually typed in because I don't know if they can make it or not, or etc. But we'll start tackling these as they come in, you know.
Yeah, just go ahead and start with the first one. But let me just tell everyone Make sure you subscribe
Yes.
on the YouTube channel. So under the chat, you'll see the subscribe button, and there's also the bell icon. I'm realizing that if we post content and you don't click that button, then you won't see when it comes out and you won't know what's out there. So might be a good time to do that.
Yeah, that would be nice. Guys, please hit the subscribe and the bell so that you could always get a notice when we put out the latest video. I also wanted to say by introduction that we're very grateful to be able to share this platform with you guys and actually make a video that's a Q&A that, you know, gets everybody involved. I know there's a lot of questions surrounding, you know, the topic of Yeshua, his apostles, his teachings, you know, because, you know, clearly the word is getting around that Yeshua was not a Christian, neither were his apostles, and neither were his teachings. So we need to reassess and take another look at his teachings from the historical and religious context which they're found, which is Torah Judaism of the first century. And so we wanted to say that, you know, some questions can be quite, you know, quite difficult to answer in a few minutes. We want to try to get to as many questions as we can. So please bear with us. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a lot of these questions, and some of them that are real good, we're going to make them into segments, and so that we could touch at a later date. So yeah, I wanted to make sure I said that.
Hey, thanks, Ray.
Next, James, you got, yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks, bro. I just want to, as James alluded to, we just are figuring this out. So for those couple of you that are over there that have come in, we appreciate you being patient, hanging with us as we connect our regular Zoom recordings to YouTube. We just ask your patience because we really want your involvement. This whole thing is just was not something that we thought about and prayed about as a one-way conversation. We wanted input, we wanted discussion, we want to hit topics and questions, because the more that we grow with this, and the more that hey Scott, how you doing, man? Welcome aboard. If you can hear us, Scott, give me a thumbs up, bro. The more that we grow with this, the more that we want to be a benefit to you guys. And like I have always said, it has been a major blessing to have James and Ray here, and now for us to try to put this out there for you guys to have, where we can do this at least, you know, a couple 3 or 4 times. Hey, Miriam. Yes, you are. You're in the right spot, dear. Thank you. Sometimes I wonder if I'm in the right spot. All right. All right, Frederick, welcome aboard. But we do appreciate you coming aboard tonight. And if this becomes something that we all enjoy and can grow by, we definitely want to continue with this and keep it going. So James, if you want to, or Ray, or James, if you want to add something before we actually get started.
No, I would say let's just jump into the questions. I see we have 2 from Ray already.
Okay.
We have some coming into the chat, so let's jump in.
Yes.
All right. Like I said, some of these questions are pretty difficult, but you know, since we kind of already announced the Q&A since yesterday, last night, I had a question already from Miriam Livingston, a good friend of mine.
Yes.
What she asks is this. She says, what do you do with Revelation 22:13, portraying Jesus as saying, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last? Obviously, she says, obviously Christians are saying this is a claim to be God, referencing Isaiah 44:6. Mm-hmm. So what I'll do is I'll go to Revelation.
Oh. Okay, Ray.
The miracles of modern technology.
Modern technology. Yes.
So let me do this. Let me go through one of the first questions. I see while he's coming back up.
Okay.
For Drooly Dog, what's the question? What's Torah Judaism versus traditional modern Judaism? I would say these are terms we use. These are terms thrown around in the Jewish world. Often Torah Judaism is spoken from a position of the correct Judaism. And like in the case of modern, I haven't heard modern Judaism so much, but maybe modern Orthodox. And from the position of Orthodox, modern Orthodox doesn't quite add up. So these are just terms that you might hear, they're distinctions. I think from the Orthodox world, they have a big problem with Reform and conservative and modern Orthodox because they feel it's light on Torah, or it has a problematic interpretation and therefore a problematic orthopraxy of how to live out the Torah. So that's what I would say there. And yeah, okay, so Ray's back.
I got him back.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I must have froze or something.
I'm
sorry, guys.
That's okay. James was able to jump on to Drew's real quick. So go ahead, Ray, if you want to pick back up where you were, man.
Okay. So, yeah, guys, I was having a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm sorry about that. But getting here to Revelations 22:13, I think it is. Okay. Let me get to the passage. It says like this. That passage in particular says, verse 12 says, "Behold, I am coming soon, and my reward is with me, to give to each according to what he has done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who are able to wash their robes so that they might have the right to the tree of life and may enter into the city by its gates." Let me say a few things really quick, okay? I'm going to try to get to this as quick as I can because the book of Revelation is already a difficulty. I mean, for many of our listeners, from people growing up in the church in Christianity, for the most part, they have always taken this book to be kind of straightforward and literal. And even if they know that there's a lot of allegory to it in order to interpret it, they still interpret it literal as it's something that is happening. But we have to understand that this is part of Jewish mysticism of the first century. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of code. There's a lot of allegory. These things are not literal at all. And at the moment that you start literalizing a lot of these things, you'll fail to understand the teachings behind them. We must understand a few things. I did a video on this many years ago. It was basically the same question. The book of Revelation, in chapter 1, it says that this is the message, these are the secrets, this is the revelation that God has given to Jesus, his servant, and Jesus gave him to his angel, and his angel gave him to John the apostle, okay, for the communities. Remember, guys, the moment Yeshua died, was resurrected, this is something different, something we're not used to. Hence, he is called the first fruits of those who are raised from the resurrection of the dead. And not just any resurrection, because Lazarus was raised from the dead, but he's not part of the first fruits of the resurrection of the end times. Jesus is, Yeshua is, according to the Gospels, this is what has transpired. Once he goes into heaven, this is something in the tradition of Torah, Judaism, called Merkava, the workings of the chariot. Nothing but mysticism, Kabbalah, as we understand it today. We know two other guys who have entered into heaven as well, Enoch and Elijah. And according to Jewish tradition, both of these guys turned into something we know as malachim, angels. Okay? They because flesh and blood cannot dwell in these heavenly places. It's not even a physical place. It's some type of dimension or another world, right? And so the person who's speaking a lot of times to John is this angel who is Yeshua's counterpart it is his angel. In Christianity, that might mean one thing. In Judaism, it means something else. And so very quickly, I'll skim through something that is very deep, okay? The highest recesses of the soul, we've had rabbis like Joseph Caro, who has said that he was so lofty, I mean, such a righteous man that he merited to be taught by an angel. It's called his Magid, his angel. And this angel will come and teach him Torah. There's an ancient midrash that says that every person, when he is in the womb, he is taught by his angel Torah. They're taught Torah. Mm-hmm. And the moment they're born, the angel slaps the baby right in the lips and makes him forget all the Torah that he learned while in the womb. He learned all the Torah, but when he's born, he forgets it all. And when you're in this world, you are required to learn this Torah again, to go and search out these sparks and learn and relearn them again. But here is this concept of each human being having a heavenly counterpart, his angel. As you get down into the Kabbalistic writings, I think Sha'arei Kedusha by Rabbi Chaim Vital, who was a disciple of the Arizal, he teaches that one's angel is this is weird, is his soul. It's a very lofty level of your soul, which you might not be connected to at all times. Remember, there's different levels to your soul, right? And so this part of your soul can whisper secrets to you, teach you secrets. Not everyone is on the level to be able to listen to his soul in such a way, hence why only a few have done it. Another one that I know is the Ramchal, who also had a Magi. It's very interesting to me that in Christian tradition, and in Messianics believe the same thing, you'll hear this thing about Jesus being in his pre-incarnate state, the angel of the Lord. Have you guys heard about this, Mitch, James? Jesus being the angel of the Lord in his pre-incarnate state. Yes. And so every time he comes out in some type of passage in the Hebrew Bible as the angel of the Lord, they say, that was a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus, the angel of the Lord. This angel of the Lord, very interesting in Jewish Agada and Hashkafa outlook of these philosophies and these different types of truths. This angel of the Lord is called Metatron, the highest of all the intelligences of the Creator. He's still a created being, by the way, but he's the highest. He works almost like a system. It's very hard to explain. And it is taught that Enoch, when he was taken to the world and out of this world alive and translated, he became some form of this angel, Metatron, because there's a higher one, there's a low one. It can be very complicated. These systems can be very complicated, but suffice to say that in many other sources of the rabbis, like the Vilna Gaon, like the Ramchal, they teach, these are all Kabbalists, they teach that the Messiah, we're not talking about Jesus in a second, we're talking about within Jewish tradition, the Messiah's heavenly counterpart is this angel, the angel of the Lord called Metatron. He's such a lofty angel, they don't even say his name, they call him Memtet, okay? And it is taught that the name of the Creator is within him, okay? And so this angel is actually the higher soul, the heavenly counterpart of the Messiah. It's also the heavenly counterpart of Moses. But the neat thing is that it's Moses's angel as well, but on a lower level. On the highest level that can be, this angel is the Messiah's soul. It's the Messiah's angel. And so I said all that to say, to give a little bit of background of what must be going on here in Revelation, when it says that Jesus gave this message to his angel, it says his angel. And as you read the rest of the book of Revelation, it makes sense that this is the angel of the Lord connected with the Messiah, Mentet. So in all three passages that I find this, I am the Alpha and the Omega. This happens in other books of the prophets where an angel will come and it will speak, and he speaks in the first person as if he is God. Prophets do this too. Isaiah a lot of times speaks something that God says, but he speaks it in the first person. Is Isaiah God? No. Same thing when an angel does it, and he speaks in the first person as if it was God. The angel is not God. He's speaking in the first person because he is a malach. He is a messenger of the Creator. In the Talmud, in the Gemara, it says that the shaliach, the messenger, he is one with the sender, meaning that in ancient Israel, in the ancient Middle East, a king who sent his messenger, right? That messenger who's bringing the message, it was like if it was the message, if it was from the king himself. And so this works. This works for sure. This is exactly how it is. When you hear an angel speaking in the first person as if it was God, that angel is relying the message of God. That angel is not God. Same thing goes for the prophet that does the same thing. Okay, so in all three passages, it is clear that the speaker, that the person where the source from where this is coming from is God, not Jesus. And it could be the angel of Jesus who is saying this thing in the first person. Hopefully that kind of clears it up. I don't want to spend any more time than that on it. These are very complicated questions, okay? But I promise you, Miriam and our listeners, that I'm either going to write an article or we're going to share some type of teaching completely on this topic. Hopefully that gives a little bit of background.
That's good, Ray. These topics are incredibly convoluted and tough if you're hearing them for the first time. So I did see a question in there about angels. It's also good to know that there are different levels and classes of angels. The seraph are higher than the angels of the lower worlds, and we'll talk about that. I think we have other episodes on that.
Yes.
But there are different classes. So
yes.
Angel is a broad term in English, but in the Hebrew there are various levels. And to Ray's point, Metatron and Sandalphon, these other angels are like composites. They're almost as if they're they're an entire class all in one. So it's very much there's a tiered system.
Okay. Great job guys on that. I've got one from you, Ray. I'll let you get your breath for a second because you're going to need it. All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, this one comes from Scott. He goes, can you guys try to touch on the cross and Paul from the perspective of Corinth? Okay, if you're reading it, it says, can you guys try to touch on the cross and Paul from the perspective of Corinth?
Do we have a passage he has in mind?
Yeah, it'd be good to see the passage.
Yeah.
I can while you're pulling that up, Scott. I know there's a delay on YouTube. I'll just say this, that for those who aren't familiar, Genesis Rabbah 56 has a midrash that Isaac carried his cross, and it's a very famous midrash. So when Yeshua is teaching his disciples, and he said, if you're going to follow me, you need to pick up your cross and carry it. And it's a metaphor that is from the midrash that they would have had to have understood for him to teach that, to use that teaching. It's a very famous midrash. It seems like it has so many different components. And in the midrash, Isaac was killed as a sacrifice for the people of Israel. And I think that the cross then in the first century and in Paul's time as well, still, the cross is a metaphor for that idea of self-sacrifice to the point of death, which in Judaism is Mesiras Nefesh. So just the background to the cross. Now, I will say the cross did become something very negative in the eyes of the Jewish people, because the cross becomes almost a symbol. And if you are aware, in Judaism, there's a big problem with that. So that's where it has moved, where it could be a metaphor, like a midrashic metaphor, but unfortunately, as time went on, it became something a little bit more problematic and took on a different life of its own.
Okay, guys, Scott pulled up 1 Corinthians 1:18.
Yeah.
1:18.
I saw that. I was finished. I was waiting on James to get finished. So
Okay.
I'll read what it says here. Maybe I'll go from verse 18. So it says, "For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent." I'll stop there. So I've read this passage before, and we have to understand the context from where Rabbi Paul is teaching from. We have to understand what was the Messianic awakening or understanding that was prevalent in the first century, and what was going on in the minds of the apostles, even of Paul. Okay, so the prevalent idea of the Messiah was a political one that the Messiah, whomever he was, needed to be able to relieve the oppression of Israel's enemies off them. And so at this moment, it was Rome, right? And so if the Messiah is him, if this is the Messiah, then he has to fight against Rome, deliver Israel from their oppression, break the teeth of the wicked. And if he were to be able to do that, then this is the Lord's Messiah for sure. This was the idea of who the Messiah was, a political one. And how do we know this? We know this from historical sources because maybe 50 years after Jesus and the apostles, Bar Kokhba, who was claimed to be the Messiah, and Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest sages of Israel of all time, he cast his lot with Rabbi Akiva, claimed him to be the Messiah, and said, "This is him." Bar Kokhba, son of the star, as he was called, because he fought the wars of God. Literally, he fought the wars of God. He was a warrior, and he was from the line of Judah, of the descendants of David, of the kingly line. So this was the prevalent idea. They believed that whoever the Messiah had to be able to do this, had to be able to deliver Israel from their enemies. But what do we have here? Even Jesus's apostles believed this idea. How do I know? It's right there in the Gospels. There are times towards the end and even in the middle where Jesus says, "I am going to be taken and delivered into the hands of ungodly men, who will then deliver him to the power of Rome, and I will be killed." Various times the apostles acted like, what? Oh yeah, that's what's supposed to happen. That's not what happens. Peter, who was left in charge, who was one of the tzaddikim, one of the leaders of the pack of these Nazarenes, of this group, says, "May it never be. That's never going to happen. You're the Messiah. It's never." And Yeshua has to tell him, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. You have no part to say what's going on here. He says, you're not mindful of the things of God, but of the things of man, he says, because there is a lot that was not known about the mission of the Messiah in all of its details, even to this very day. The sages say the same exact thing. Maimonides, one of the greatest rabbis of all time, says that we don't know the in and out details of what will transpire with the coming of the Messiah and the full redemption. We have some insights. There's enough that we know, but the exact details, we don't know. Even Yeshua said that he did not know the exact timing of things. Only the Father knows. Okay, so getting back here to this passage, I say all that as a background. They believed in a political Messiah, that he was going to overthrow the kingdom of Rome through war, through real physical war. And here's this guy claimed to be the Messiah. They just killed this man. They just crucified him. The Romans did. How can this be the Messiah? So then, and then among their pack, many, time after, among the pack of the Nazarenes, they claimed that Yeshua rose from the dead. Who's ever heard of it, such a thing? About the Messiah? And it created a huge ruckus in Israel. Right? And so Paul, he persecuted the believers for a long time. Paul is saying to whoever will listen that the message of the cross, which is connected to Yeshua, right? The cross is now some type of, it's connected to this Messiah, because this would be Messiah was crucified. So he said the message of the cross, of the suffering death of this rabbi, atonement brought upon in his name, right? In his merit of all who cling to him. It's a message, it's foolishness to those who don't know any better. But he says, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. It may not be what people had in mind of what would happen to the Messiah.
Right.
But this is the message that the Gospels bring. The Messiah came. He was killed. And he rose from the dead. That's why I tell a lot of people, they like to push, and it's fine for you to believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. It's more than okay. You should believe it, etc. But when you start calling people heretics and start discounting people, this is why we have this history of what has transpired. It's not very wise to do that, because Paul says right here that he says, but for us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Does God has other means of salvation? Meaning, were people saved before Yeshua? Yes. By Moses, by the prophets, and even still today, godly Jews who are serving God with all their might, with all their soul, they do not have a part in Olam Haba? Man, of course they do. God's salvation is not about your personal theological beliefs. God will sort out the ins and outs of all this mess towards the end. But we need to understand these words in the correct context. And what Paul is saying there is that this message of the cross, of this Messiah who was killed by the cross, this is foolishness. Haven't we heard that before? I mean, I've heard that by plenty of people, anti-missionaries, people who don't believe in God, atheists. This is foolishness. How is your Messiah? He was killed. I mean, even his enemies at the foot of the cross were making fun of him. If you really are the Messiah, then go ahead and take yourself off the cross, buddy. Surely God is with you, right? So it's foolishness to those who are perishing, Paul says. To us who are being saved, this is the power of God. I mean, that's what I get out of that. You guys want to add anything to that?
Mitch, do you have anything? I might add something.
Go ahead, James, because a lot of what Ray said is in the Christian mindset and how it's played out. It is very black and white. There's, it's the one particular way, or it's the one particular path. And so when you begin, because we will receive listeners and participants who are still wrapped into that mindset. And it is a very, very difficult peeling of the banana, so to speak, to get out of. Because in translations that are a lot of times quoted on what we read or what we may put up, those translations aren't necessarily what's intended culturally or contextually through the background, but it's because it's through that particular translation. That's what sets that solid foundation with. So that world that I flipped out of, that's a hard, that's a hard line to pull until you get a clear understanding of the culture and the context and the building blocks that lead up to who Paul was, where Paul got his education from, where Paul's speech began to develop from, and so on and so on. But go ahead, James.
Yeah, so there are two components that I think we could dial in a little bit more to. So Scott's question was about Corinth, and Miriam has a follow-up as well about others perishing. So Ray did a good job of covering kind of the Jewish side of it, but in the Roman Empire, the rest of the Roman Empire was involved in paganism, and the sages and the apostles and everyone said that it's not a good road, and if you don't leave those things behind, you can't be part of these communities. That's what they said in Acts 15, essentially. Here are the things you need to do to stay in the synagogue community. The negative implication is that if you don't, you're not in the synagogue community and you're kind of on your own. Around the time of the end of the first century, 90s-ish, the Roman emperor, I think it was Domitian at that time, started to see that there were a lot of Gentiles who were not taking part in the Roman holidays.
Roman cult.
Yep.
Mhm.
And there were more holidays of the year than there were not holidays. So it was noticeable that these numbers and the taxes and the money that they were expecting to make on these people for these holidays, because they also made money off of these holidays. They weren't just strictly for pagan worship. They were, but they also were a great way of making money. So they realized there are a lot of people who aren't taking part in this. So Domitian started to do a kind of like a census to figure out where are these Gentiles going. And to their shock, they found a lot of them were going into these Jewish communities. And they were already, if you wanted to be a Jew, you were exempt from the holidays, but we're going to tax you very hard for that.
Yes.
And at that time, that money, the tax from that money was going to the temple, which is now no longer the temple in Jerusalem, it's the temple to Jupiter. So it was you don't just go be a part of those people and not give the Roman Empire money. So probably for money and politics, like Ray said before, they started to squeeze those synagogue communities to tell us who is in your community that's not an actual Jew, because they belong to us, and we're gonna reconcile this. And a lot of the Jewish communities simply said, well, these people are there, they are, here's the list, right? It was survival. That's when the persecutions started between the Jewish community and eventually the Jewish people were exiled, right? They were exiled from Rome, and the Gentiles were kind of left on their own. Actually, they were exiled a few times, but it was a problem because if you're pulling them away from the emperor and you're replacing them with some new figure, that's a big problem for the emperor. It became a big problem in the case of Onkelos, who was a convert to Judaism, who was related to an emperor. It was also the same in Clement. Clement is one of Peter's students. He has his own series, the Clement homilies, that are written of his studies, his journeys. He was related to the Roman emperor as well. And this was a huge slap in the face for people to leave the Roman religion and the deification of the emperor and follow someone else, much less a Jew, right? Because these people were constantly at war during the 60s all the way through 130. So that's kind of when this happened. And of course, if you read the Roman philosophers, they have some nasty things to say about the Jewish people because they're countercultural. Appian is one of them. And he speaks about the Jewish people and how they're not into promiscuous stuff like the Roman Empire, and they're not a part of this culture, and they're quite honestly a problem. So the people who were in Corinth were part of that community, much to the chagrin of most other people in the empire, including the state. But they would have suffered a lot of hardship for that. It wasn't as simple as people going from one church to another. It was very much a social and political, and even in the case of families, a destructive thing for them to be part of that community. And what I think Paul is doing, he's trying to tell them to hang in there because those people are perishing. Those pagans, don't listen to them. They're perishing. They're going to die. It's going to be terrible because they're dying outside of what you have in Yeshua through the God of Israel. So that's kind of the other side of it. The Gentiles are in a really tough position. And the Roman Empire, like I said, in the 90s, it's really worth looking up. Scholars call it the parting of the ways. That's when the emperors really started to squeeze out those people who were kind of playing in the middle. They were living a Jewish style life, but they weren't paying for it to the emperor's will.
I wanna also say that I gave that one part, I gave that one side of the understanding of the prevalent ideas of the Messiah in the first century, right? A political hero, a political Messiah who will fight the wars of God. Now I'm going to give you another side that should be said with this, and this is why Paul is speaking the way that he is. For the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us who are being saved, it is the power of God. In another place in Romans 1:16, he says, I am not ashamed of the gospel because it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew and then to the Greek, right?
Yes.
So what's happening here is that we also have to understand that within the outlook of Torah Judaism, there's also these views from the rabbis. This is not Christianity. This is not from the Messianics, none of that. Okay, they have this belief, this idea that just like Moses, who lived, he was there, he lived among the Egyptians, then for some time he was there, then he left, he was hidden somewhere in Midian, he was hidden, but then he was revealed again and helped save the Jewish people out of Egypt, the Exodus out of Egypt. So they say, in the same way, the Mashiach will reveal himself, be concealed for a period of time, and reveal himself again. It's very hard not to be able to see this idea of the Messiah being here for a moment, going somewhere else, and he has to come again or be revealed again. That is the language of the Rabbonim, of the rabbis. Revealed, concealed, revealed again. Not first and second coming, right? It's not nothing like that. So it's all part of the same framework. And so the neat thing about this is that the Jewish people who are they have the right to be this way because they're the ones with the foot on their neck and the harsh persecution consistently. They can see or be able to breathe anything else but stop the oppression, deliver us, God, from our enemies, right? They had no idea that the Messiah, not that they didn't have no idea, of course they had the idea of the rabbis, it's in the Bible, that the Messiah and the redemption was supposed to be a universal thing, not just for the Jewish people, but even for the nations. But thinking about all this stuff, right? Thinking about all the things that is happening, how can the Jewish people say that the redemption is going to be for everyone, even for these pagans? They can never conceive of such a thing like that, right? But there it is. And this is where I think that Yeshua gets a lot of merit, because he is the only, this is a phenomenon, he's the only Jewish rabbi. He is definitely a frum Orthodox rabbi, if we can call him that there are myriads and myriads and myriads and myriads of Gentiles who are clinging to his teachings, to him.
No.
That's the thing on Zoom. You always freeze in an awkward position.
James, let me ask you a question real quick, going to what Ray was saying. The revealing and concealing is a concept in the Christian world when you step back for a moment and you begin to think about this from where you're at with your own process, with your own, as you elevate your soul in belief. This is where the revealing and the concealing come back and forth, correct? Because it is a matter, and I think this is part of the episode that we may have just done. This is very important when it comes to that time that, as Ray alluded to, as Jesus led, or, any other way that we may state something is being revealed through scripture or hidden. This all has to be right with your soul to get to that level of it being revealed to you either the first time or back again. Am I thinking along the correct lines here?
Yeah, and I think it's what we said in our last video. You don't just learn knowledge,
right?
You don't read something like of this nature and understand it and grasp it, there's a certain amount of preparation that has to be, prerequisites that have to be in place. And, it seems that as time has gone on, the earliest generations that were closer to Sinai, at least the way Judaism has it, they had a higher level of soul. Now, over time, that degrades. But the beauty is those souls have revealed and released information into the world that by the time our souls have degraded to where they are, there's a lot more information out to help us step up to higher levels. If you find it, if you meet those criteria, if you're humble. And we live in an age where all of these materials now are being made available. And if you haven't been watching the chat, I've been putting in links. Someone asked about Metatron. There's an amazing book that, in my opinion, the Vilna Gaon is the leading expert on some of these concepts. And he himself was a Kabbalist. And I know some people, Ray, I can see you down there. You're a Chassid. The Vilna Gaon he had an issue with Hasidism because of the context of Shabbatai Tzvi, the failed Messianic movement that came before. It was a very dangerous time. But the Vilna Gaon was a mystic and a Kabbalist, and he had one of the greatest schools of Kabbalistic thought. And in fact, it's the halakhic opinion of the Gaon that rules Jerusalem, because he sent emissaries in to prepare the way for Messiah. Now, his doctrine is very challenging, but if you can read the book I put in the link, he explains Metatron, he explains the Messianic era, the consciousness that we're all headed into, that we have to head into, and how science is a part of that. And here we are, we're on Zoom and YouTube, and we're sharing ideas that, quite honestly, these ideas wouldn't have been shared in this type of forum at all in the last, 1,800 years? But now we can do that, and people have enough of an idea about them to meet. And we're in this weird little niche that God help all of us, will grow. And that's all because of this movement that, number one, has been revealed to us, and two, that we're moving into this time that we have to prepare ourselves. We have to be ready. We have to understand these ideas and put them into play. Ray, I'll give it back to you in a second. We're just talking about concealment. And with that, I want to take a moment. I'm going to put a link in the chat in a second here as well. I'm writing on these ideas as well. I'm putting them into notes that are hopefully easily shareable, and you can discuss them. It's a project I'm working on. So I'm going to send that in the chat here in a second. Some of the ideas exist on there now. Feel free to look for them or just email me. Because between Ray and I, we may already have this knowledge, this information distilled for you to gain. But we're in an era now where concealment isn't so much the problem. Having people understand it and apply it is the new challenge. And that's where we are today.
Very good. Very good, James. And James, if you could also, are you alluding to a link to your page?
Yeah.
Yes. And if I could encourage you, if you're not already taking part in that, it is a fantastic site for information, and just a one or two to challenge your thought too as well. So thank you for doing that, James.
Yep.
You have any other questions?
Any other questions?
We have about 10 more minutes in here, it looks like.
Yes.
Let me go back to the chat here.
I'm reading here something, Miriam, she asked to clarify, you're not including Torah observant Jews who reject the cross as those who are perishing, correct? So, and you answered, I believe, James, and that's exactly what we believe, okay? Not only what we believe, what we know. We have to understand that there were plenty of people that disagreed with Yeshua and the apostles, especially with Yeshua, since he is the leader, didn't believe in him. May have even persecuted him. And Yeshua at the cross said, "Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they do." This was not, how do you say, he didn't say this being sarcastic from the cross or anything like that. It is truth, okay? We know from Jewish sources that Mashiach is supposed to bring some type of reconciliation with God of all people. And Yeshua's whole mission was about bringing those far away from God, and even those who are religious, who have fallen short, to try to bring them closer to God through example, through his teachings, And he meant that when he said what he said. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Okay?
Yep. And I would add too, just to put a stronger point on that, Miriam, I think they're right for rejecting the presentation that they were given, because it's a very problematic presentation. They did exactly what they should do and what they needed to do. And honestly, love them or not, Paul says that they, a number of times he says that they're not seeing it was the way that Hashem opened the door for the nations to be a part of it. And when you look at the story of Joseph, that's the footprint that this has all followed all throughout time. Joseph goes away. He takes on a name that's not Jewish. His brothers don't recognize him. He doesn't seem to be a Jew at all when they're standing right near him. The nations are being brought in first. And then at the end, the second time he says, I'm Joseph, the second time, we see the people wake up. Now, there's a lot in there, and there's a lot that I'm saying, and there's a lot I'm not saying. But what I am saying is that the way that it went is the way that it was supposed to go. And we did an episode on divine providence. And I think at this point, we're at an age where we're being challenged to do exactly what we're doing. Come back to the middle. Both streams, we all know this. You can't share an idea from one side to the other without some fight, and vice versa. But now we're coming to an age where more people are coming into that middle ground, and Jews and Christians. And I think conversations like this, I think that Soteria said we should do more weekly studies. I think something like that would be amazing. Weekly, bi-weekly, whatever we can come up with. This is how we do it. This is how we move that forward at this point.
I think so
I
too.
totally agree. You made a great point, James. Go ahead, Mitch.
No, I'm sorry, Ray. I agree too, guys, because a lot of my conversations are outside of Bet Midrash or outside of, the Facebook pages where there's a lot of discussion that has been going on. There's a continuity there of somewhat. A lot of my discussions are with people who are just trying. They're seeing those gray areas, and they're seeing those pieces that are just not fitting together, and they've been involved in it forever, like the three of us have, and many of you that are in the chat session. And the not the difficulty, but the challenge with this is we could get 10 or 12 people through the chat session, and we could have half of them have a great time on Bet Midrash. The other half of them are still doing Beth Moore studies. And so it's, the questions, are fascinating. I applaud those of you that came by tonight and just, helped us get this kind of off the ground, because this has been a dream that I know Ray and I tried to do this way back when we first started the Rethinking Faith YouTube channel. We tried hard, and we just couldn't get it right. So we had to go out and hire a brain, and we did, James. And so and getting James here, and it's been such a lot of help for us, because doing this and then still having the neurons to keep shooting off information of what we try to study and put together for episodes, but also doing live like this is a way for us to get the personal, or at least for me, I know Ray and James has known a lot of you guys for quite a while, but this is my opportunity to kind of get to know you a little bit more so than just a post that you might have put up on one of the Facebook pages or whatever. And I think it would be fantastic to open this up and just get on out there. But we're right up against our quitting time here, and because I know sooner or later here in a moment, Ray's going to have to get up and go to the bathroom, and it always happens when we do these extended sessions. And so, but
I wanted to say one thing real quick, Mitch.
Yes,
I wanted to say
please,
one
Ray.
thing. So I had a question. And it's actually not even a question. It was like almost an article one of my good friends sent me in a message. His name is Seth. But that question is very, very complicated. And I promised him that I would either say something, which I think I kind of touched when I was speaking about the whole situation of Revelation, Yeshua, Metatron, all these things. His question is a very good one, but it's a very long question and it would take a lot of time to unfold. So what I'll do is I'm going to try to see me, you, James, Mitch, we'll get together. I'll read this question to you guys. We'll take a look at it and we'll try to see if we can touch it in a segment on its own, because it deals with the issues of the divinity of Jesus and the nature of God. And these things can take not one episode. These things can take episodes.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Miriam says here, she says, again, thank you all you guys for your comments and the encouragement and the questions. Amazing. Miriam says, Rabbi Pinchas Lapid also wrote something similar to the Jewish rejection of Jesus was a benefit for the Gentiles. I think Ray might have that article. I do. And I was actually getting ready to say that, Miriam. James touched on it. I think it is an amazing thing what transpired, right? Because Paul says in Romans that the non-Jewish world, they were without hope. They were without God. They didn't know the creator, the one true God. They didn't know his revelation. They didn't know any of these things. The covenants are the Jewish. They belong to the Jewish people. The Torah belongs to the Jewish people. The blessings, all these things, they belong to the Jewish people. And where the Messiah comes from also belongs to the Jewish people, right? But amazingly, again, it is a phenomenon because Jesus died. He didn't say, hey, I'm going out to the Gentiles. You guys, you want to hear me out? I'm gonna be like Jonah, and I'm going out to the non-Jewish world. Jonah didn't even want to do that. Yeshua never said this. He was killed before anything ever happened. So everything that happened after that, it is literally, this is a Jewish principle that they believe. Nothing happens in the world without God. So this is hashgacha pratis. This is divine providence. The way that everything happened and the teachings of this rabbi, of this Rebbe of Israel to be in the hands of non-Jews. This is a great salvation for the non-Jewish world and predominantly for them. I would not know Torah. I would not have never drawn as close, neither my friends here, Mitch, we would not know these things. And many of our friends would not know these things if it wasn't for that. I tell this to people a lot of times. You see this great phenomenon and thing that has happened amongst the Jewish world, drawing close to Israel, drawing close to Hashem, drawing close to his Torah. It is intimately connected with Yeshua of Nazareth.
And just like that, the Spirit spoke.
We're going to take some donations for his bandwidth.
Bless his heart. You got to love him. Hey, guys, from the three of us, and we'll let Ray finish his thought maybe the next time around, but we'll keep you posted. Thank you guys so much for participating on behalf of the three of us as we try to piece together the technology to make this thing work and try to do our best to keep the conversation alive. We thank you guys. LOL. Anyway, but we hope to see you soon, and blessings to you, blessings to your families, and blessings to those that you share our YouTube channel with. Thank you, and we hope you have a good evening, okay? Take care.